Welcome, everyone. My name is Lisa Collins, UBA's Director of Strategic Solutions. And on behalf of United Benefit Advisors and RxBenefits, I welcome you to today's presentation in the UBA Employee Benefits webinar series. Today's topic is pharmacy benefit, how to make sure you have the best pharmacy plan. We've got two speakers today, Trevor Pittas. Trevor recently joined RxBenefits as the business development executive. After graduating with a dual degree in finance and accounting from Virginia Tech, Trevor landed his first job with Deloitte Consulting in Washington, D.C. He then transitioned into a sales role at Cigna Healthcare, where he focused primarily on selling medical, dental, pharmacy, and vision insurance to varying labor unions and federal agencies across the country. We also have Hope May with us today. Hope May serves as the clinical pharmacist on RxBenefits clinical team, where she supports RxBenefits clients, account management, business development, and implementation teams in analyzing claims data or clients' claims data and delivering appropriate clinical solutions tailored to each client's pharmacy objectives. As part of the clinical team, aside from analyzing the claims data, Hope remains current on pharmacy industry news, making sure to provide valuable clinical insights when consulted. Hope received her Doctor of Pharmacy degree from Samford University McWhorton School of Pharmacy in Birmingham, Alabama, and has over 7 years of retail pharmacy experience working at Rite Aid and Walgreens before joining RxBenefits clinical team in early 2021. Welcome, both of you. Trevor, Hope, turn it over to you.
Thank you, Lisa, so much for those introductions. And number two, for giving us really the opportunity to speak this afternoon. We really appreciate it. Both of us are really excited to be here today. And with that, I'll get going, but do just want to make sure I'm not speaking on mute. Can you just confirm you can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you,
Yes.
Trevor.
All right, perfect. Thank you. So I know we only have about 30 minutes with everybody today, but this is really just kind of a quick agenda or the topics that we're going to be covering. I do know sometimes these virtual meetings can be tough, right? But I would encourage folks on the line. I think everybody's muted, but I believe there is a chat open. Would encourage you all to participate, ask questions. At the end, when we wrap up, we'll try to go through the questions that are in there and answer those. And for any that we cannot answer, we'll make sure that we go back and then follow up with Lisa so that we can get you those answers. But really want to begin this afternoon by taking a hard look at the pharmacy landscape to really understand some of the challenges that are out there that are ultimately driving up pharmacy costs for members and health plans. And when you really begin to dig into these rising costs, here's what we're seeing on our side. That nearly 3% of the member population accounts for 55% of the total plan cost. Now, why is that? Right? Well, it's because of the high-cost specialty drugs. High-cost specialty drugs are those that treat chronic and complex conditions. And let me just say that chronic conditions are not just one-time scripts. These are conditions that demand treatment for a long period of time. And if you look at the bottom of the slide, kind of bolded out in red, we frame this spending in a different way, which may resonate even more. So if you look at a 1,000 life group, there's typically about 1.2 million in pharmacy plan spend. Of that 1.2 million, nearly 660,000 of it are driven by 30 people. So again, 30 people out of a 1,000 life group are driving 55% or $660,000 worth of that 1.2 million. So it's a lot, right? And unfortunately, this problem is not going away, especially when you look at the $133 billion in spending of new brand launches over the next 5 years. And a lot of these are for new specialty medications, but a lot of them are even for existing medications that will go back to having new therapies. We saw this with Humira when it came to market almost 20 years ago, started with rheumatoid arthritis, quickly went to Crohn's disease and irritable bowel syndrome. And these costs are unfortunately driven by conflicts. Big pharma has big money and they influence everything that's going on in the pharmacy world today, for good and for bad, right? Big Pharma has developed incredible miracle drugs that have changed lives. Just look at how quickly, the COVID-19 vaccine was developed. But unfortunately, not everything they do is noble. These companies report their numbers to Wall Street and have to keep their shareholders in mind, meaning earning a profit is at the soul of everything that they do, inherently causing them to drive the usage of high-cost drugs up and up. Did you know that when a patient requests their doctor for a drug by name, that doctor prescribes the drug 85% of the time? It's wild, but true. And it was done as part of a study by Cal Berkeley. And this is why pharma companies are investing $6.5 billion in direct-to-consumer advertising of high-cost medicines, such as your Humiras or Skyrizi or Ozempic. I'm sure everybody is very familiar with Ozempic by now. I know Hope's going to talk about this a little bit later. And I'm sure you've seen the television commercials and TikToks and everywhere, right? It's being promoted everywhere. The other half of the conflict lies with the vertically integrated PBMs and carriers. Back in 2015, United Healthcare acquired OptumRx, and it was supposed to be a healthcare game changer, right? And that now we have the medical and the pharmacy under one roof. We can drive costs down and better control trend. CVS soon followed suit by acquiring Aetna, and then Cigna purchased Express Scripts that same year. So the reality is, though, these carriers are earning record profits as depicted in the slide, and keeping pharmacy carved in is really their moneymaker. As Lisa mentioned, I actually worked in sales at Cigna for about 3 years, and I've seen it and was pushed to do it over there. Sell that integrated medical pharmacy carved in story, truly because it meant more profit for the enterprise. So when we think about all of these challenges and conflicts of interest that exist within the pharmacy marketplace, that leads us to start asking some questions, right? Such as, who is carving out pharmacy and why? So I think this slide truly illustrates who's carving out pharmacy today. Obviously, you have, your Amazons, Apples, Walmarts, and as it says here, about 95% of the Fortune 100 companies carve out pharmacy benefits, 90% of the 250, and 85% of the Fortune 500. Notably, these are clients with size, scale, and expertise to better understand and manage the process, and because they want better economics, control, and insights. Really the same three reasons why a client might move from fully insured to being self-funded. These companies may be a lot bigger than those who are on the phone with us today, but maybe not, I'm not sure. The point is, though, once an employer reaches as few as 100 to 200 employees, most brokers agree that it makes sense to explore the options of carving out. So why, right? What are the advantages of carving out? I would say bottom line really is that carving out the prescription drug program comes down to really three things, that being transparency, control, and insights. Number one, the financials are going to be better. The rates and rebates will be guaranteed and will be more competitive than in a carved-in arrangement. Number two, you're going to get actionable insights through analysis and reporting on your claims data. Carving out gives employers access to their plan-specific pharmacy data that allows them to see what's happening with their benefits from the macro to the micro level. This is really so important because it can lead to impactful decision-making on adjustments in respect to plan design changes or certain clinical solutions that might make sense to either maximize savings or minimize disruption for the employee base. Number three is better control through transparent contract terms. The best pharmacy benefit contracts include full pricing and rebate transparency, straightforward language, visibility in a plan financial performance, and the ability to perform audits. having a clear view into rebates and guaranteed discounts reconciled at the individual client level is very, very important. When a company is carved in, they typically cannot see the details behind their contract, which can significantly alter their pricing and rebate terms. Just for example, at RxBenefits, I priced out numerous carved-in arrangements that show the promised client discount was not actually hitting the mark they said they were going to hit, meaning the client was paying more than they had to and what was agreed upon in the contract. And typically, these carved-in arrangements do not actually provide that type of reporting on the carrier's performance and if they're meeting the guarantees that they made. And if there's no true-up language in the contract, the client is the one who ends up bearing the cost for the carrier's underperformance, which in all cases is truly messed up and not right. And they need to be held accountable. So this is more of a dive on the differences between a carved-in versus a carved-out arrangement. I'm not going to go through everything on the list here, but I do want you to remember that these carved-in arrangements are medical carriers. So that being Cigna, United, Aetna, the Blues, that are holding pharmacy contracts, medical carriers holding pharmacy contracts. Those BUCAs, true expertise and focus is on the medical side. I think that's truly, really an overarching theme on this slide. When you look at the language in both these visuals, what jumps out at me is the medical emphasis versus the pharmacy emphasis when you look at carved in versus carved out. In a carved out arrangement, again, pharmacy is the focus 100% of the time. At the center of the desk, not on the side of the desk, pharmacy benefits are the most utilized benefit by your employees. Wouldn't you want a team who specializes in pharmacy only to manage the complexities of the benefit that your employees use the most? Not to mention, again, the economics, going back to the previous slide, there's going to be better rates and rebates in a carved out arrangement as well. Contract lengths, I think, are really important as well, and probably sometimes get a bit overlooked. So I think, yes, in one sense, having a 3-year contract is a little bit nice, right? You're safe, you're secure, you're locked in for 3 years, you don't have to worry about it. At the same time, though, the pricing gets stale quickly, right? So when you look at a 3-year contract, year one, the pricing most likely, yes, will be competitive. But then once year 2 and year 3 hits in that 3-year deal, the pricing gets stale and typically gets uncompetitive. Number 2 is when you're locked into a 3-year deal, pharmacy marketplace, as we all know, changes rapidly. There's constantly new state and federal regulations that are coming out. It's a constantly changing industry. And that 3-year deal can lock you in and make it harder to make adjustments. And lastly, this is really just kind of a wherewithal, is the termination fees and carved out fees that I've seen many times are built into these contracts. It's really just something for you all to be aware of. I know most of you on the phone are probably looking at 1/1 renewals. You might be considering whether to go out to bid or not this year. And even if you do renew, that's something just to be aware of, is basically these carriers are trying to institute term fees or carve out fees. Or essentially, if you were to move at a later date, you're going to have to pay a penalty to do so. So again, this is just kind of a heads up for you to try to negotiate those terms out of your deal. And comparatively, the 1-year contract does get you that competitive pricing. That's a year. That's market competitive each and every year. And it's truly fluid with change. So again, I think this is something that's really, really important that gets overlooked when renewals and if you're taking a look at your pharmacy benefit, and just wanted to bring some awareness to it. So obviously there's a lot of bullets on this slide. I'm not going to touch on really any of them, but I know this is really meant to be educational. Again, I know that 1/1 renewals are coming up, probably thinking about going out to bid or not. And these are truly some good questions to ask your broker, to ask your incumbent carved-in carrier when you're requesting a renewal quote. I think this deck will probably be sent out to everybody on the phone, and so you can catch these questions at that point, or if you're savvy, you can print screenshot it so you can have them handy now. But with that, I'm going to toss it over to Hope to talk about what we are seeing on the clinical side.
Thanks, Trevor. So I want to talk to you guys about the influencers in the clinical landscape today, a lot of which I'm sure you've heard about, but we're just going to go a little bit deeper into detail, really talking about what's to be considered when you're looking at these medications and you're hearing these news stories come on, on the marketplace. So the first thing to touch on, of course, is going to be our specialty medications. And Trevor did a great job of talking about this to start, because it's actually at the top of everyone's mind, right? It's 55% or more of total plan costs being driven by 3% or less of members on a plan. That's a huge chunk of pharmacy spend. And it can be on these medications that have traditionally, or that are treating conditions that traditionally didn't have anything to really move their condition in a positive way. So we've got monumental treatments like Trikafta for cystic fibrosis and Keytruda for various types of cancer. So there's no qualms about the ability of these medications to work. They're just very expensive. So with these medications, it's, they can be oral, they can be injectable, but a good bit of these are biologics in nature. That just means they're made from living organisms. And so when you have a medication that's made from living organisms, you also have the potential for biosimilars to come onto the market as well. And so when you think of a biologic, Trevor, go to the next slide. When you think of a biologic, you're thinking of that medication made from a living organism, but I want you to think of like a brand name medication, just if we were talking about regular legend drugs, non-specialty or anything like that. The biologic is going to be your reference medication or your originator drug. But then you have the potential for a biosimilar to come onto the market after that biologic or reference drug's patent runs out. So that biosimilar, think of like a generic, even though it's not considered a generic, because it is derived from living organisms. With these biosimilars, they can be made in different ways and of slightly different substances than these than the reference medications, but they have to be just as safe as, they have to work just as well as, work in the same way as the reference medication. They have to be used in the same way, the same dose, and for the same condition as the reference drug. So one of the medications that you're probably thinking of right now is Humira. It's a blockbuster medication. It's always in the media. One of the most common specialty medications, one of the most common biologics to date that we know about. And the patent actually ran out on Humira at the top of the year. And so since then, Amjevita is a biosimilar for Humira that has been released. But there are 8 other biosimilars that have already been granted approval by the FDA as well, with at least 5 more pending approval. And the one that has interchangeable status, meaning when someone goes to the pharmacy, they can switch their medication from Humira to its biosimilar, is Silteza, right? So when they go to the pharmacy, they can switch it without having the doctor rewrite a new prescription for that medication. And that's what gives it its interchangeable status. So far, there's one medication, one biosimilar for Humira called Silteza that has that status, and it's set to be released in July of this year. But 7 additional drugs now are seeking to be considered interchangeable. And this is really where we're going to see that competition. So I've gotten a lot of questions about, well, since Humira has a biosimilar out, what does that mean for the cost of my member? What does that mean for the cost to the plan? And to be quite honest, right now, the costs look relatively similar. There's about a $400 difference when you factor in the cost per month between Amjevita and Humira. So not a huge change. But what I think we will start to see is when the competition ramps up, when Silteza is released, when other biosimilars are released throughout the year, that's when we might see pricing changes. That's when we're going to see competition and utilization of some other medications besides Humira. So that's something to also keep in mind as members are changing over their medication regimens. Next, thank you. So this slide also gives you an idea of some other blockbuster biologics that are losing patent protection in the coming years. And, you know, at the very top, Stelara, and I won't mention all of them. You guys can read the chart, but Stelara is a really good one because it's one of the more expensive biologics that are being used for psoriasis, plaque psoriasis, psoriatic arthritis, and Crohn's disease, and it's expected to lose its patent this year. I will say, don't be married to these patent expiration dates because it takes one, lawsuit, one court date to extend this patent life, and that date can really change. So this is just really a snapshot to keep in mind what might be coming on the horizon. If you know of certain people that are utilizing or certain utilizers on the plan that have prescriptions for Stelara, Cosentyx, and Entyvio, you'll think of, okay, when patent runs out, will we see biosimilars? How many will we see? What will that competition look like? So this is just a consideration slide. One of the other really large topics right now is gene therapy. And we've been getting a lot of traction about gene therapy. And what it is an experimental technique that uses genes to prevent or treat disease. And it may allow doctors to treat a disorder that by inserting a gene into a member or patient's new cells instead of drugs or surgery. So literally altering the genes of the member that's being treated. And researchers are testing several different approaches to gene therapy, whether you replace a mutated gene that's caused the disease with a healthy version of the gene, or you inactivate it or knock it out and make sure that it functions properly after that, and then introducing a new gene altogether into the body to help fight the disease. So gene therapy is one of those life-changing therapy options that may prove to be very beneficial in the future, and that's really what we're looking for in studies and all of the lab documentation that's coming out for these medications. So it seems to be a very promising treatment option for a number of diseases, and the technique is still risky and it's still under study. Just to make sure that it's safe and effective long term, right? Because if it's going to be curative, we want to know exactly how long that might be, and weigh the risks of, is it worth paying millions and millions of dollars for a medication like Hemgenix, which is on the market, hasn't been released yet, but it's set to be released, and it's $3.5 million to treat hemophilia. We want to make sure that that is worth the actual treatment. If it's going to be curative truly and not have to be redosed, that's something that we want to weigh against our risks, correct? So gene therapy is currently being tested only for diseases that have no other cures. So a lot of those orphan rare diseases that are affecting less than 200,000 people in the population. So super hot topic right now. Very exciting though. Thanks. Okay, and then I also want to touch on GLP-1s. And you may not know what that really is, but when I say Ozempic, I bet you know what that is. That's a commercial that we can't really get out of our heads. But GLP-1s are a class of medications used to treat type 2 diabetes. And the reason that, it's really top of mind right now is because people have found out that these medications have a great side effect of weight loss. Again, they're meant to treat type 2 diabetes, but they also have that side effect that, causes weight loss, and people have caught on to that. And so it's become popular in, like Trevor said, TikTok, it's on YouTube ads, it's on commercials, it's really everywhere. And it's really been impacting our plan sponsors as well. So based on our data and analytics, in 2021, $55 million was contributing to this class of medications. In 2022, it was $107 million. And we're projecting that this year it's going to be upwards of $160 million, with about 40% of that spend being driven by off-label usage, or the use that's other than their FDA-approved indication. So in this case, it would be weight loss, right? That is pretty substantial, I'd say. But you know, that's something to think about as far as cost is concerned, but also when you think about member impact, the sudden increase in the use of these GLP-1s for weight loss is causing a lot of frustrations. Members can't get their medication for type 2 diabetes. There are shortages at the pharmacy. There's an increased call volume to service departments because they can't get those medications. They want to know, what are they supposed to do, what steps to take. There's also been a surge in prior authorization requests. So when these medications come in, we want to ensure that they're being used for diabetes and not for weight loss. And so that's going to also increase the reviews that are needed associated with these medications. So how we're addressing the issue, and I think, you know, if the market's not already catching up, they will be soon, is quickly expanding teams and infrastructure to handle the influx of member calls, make sure that it's timely turnaround times for prior authorizations, that all the issues are being handled surrounding these medications. And the long-term goal is to minimize the use of off-label use of GLP-1s and substantially and quickly reduce the spend of our clients and ensure diabetic patients who need these medications can actually access them without having to stop their therapy. So to accomplish this, we enhanced our utilization management edits. So that's going to be your reviews, making sure that the language that we're using is really geared towards those with type 2 diabetes and not those you know, using it for weight loss, and also to expand just the coverage of GLP-1s altogether. So, you know, as new medications come out, we want to ensure that whatever utilization management edits we have in place are covering those as well. At the mid to end of last year, a new GLP-1 came out called Mounjaro, and you guys may have heard of that as well. It's also seen a lot of increase in spend and utilization, but we want to ensure that if we're doing anything, we're starting any utilization management edits or making changes, that is going to encompass any of the new to market medications that are coming out. So that is one of the major topics that's top of mind today. So with that, you know, we want to make sure that you guys feel up to date about what's going on in the pharmacy marketplace, that you know why carved in and carved out arrangements have pros and cons. And so with that, if you guys have any questions, please drop it in the chat. I'm going to turn it over to Lisa to see what we need to do next.
Okay, we do have a couple questions. Other than profit, why are these drugs so expensive?
That's a good question. I'll say my piece, Trevor, and then you say your piece. So profit is obviously going to be a driver, but it takes a lot of research and development money to exclusively innovate in the specialty space. So if you think manufacturers are forking out a lot of money to really analyze, to research, to develop these medications, and they want to recoup some of that back, right? They know that these medications are helping those that otherwise don't have disease-altering treatment. And so when they're focusing in this space and they're targeting this specific population that really needs the treatment, they know that they can recoup those dollars by charging a lot of money for the medications. So Trevor, I'll let you weigh in as well.
Honestly, I think you pretty much nailed it with that response.
And then just as a follow-up, for the GLP-1s, do you have a list of those drugs that are being used for weight loss? So I think the question is the name of the drugs.
Yeah, so I can give you some off the top of my head. Ozempic, Trulicity, Victoza. Those are really the top 3 ones that we see. There are some GLP-1s that are FDA approved for weight loss. So if you've ever heard of Wegovy or Saxenda, those medications are also GLP-1s, but they are exclusively approved to treat weight loss. So, you know, if you cover weight loss medications on your plan, then those medications are typical to see. It's when we're seeing Ozempic, Victoza, Trulicity, the other ones that are not approved on your plan, and you don't cover weight loss. That's when it's sort of a problem, right? Because you're incurring these costs that you didn't really intend to. So hopefully that answers.
Yes, thank you. This question came in a little bit earlier when Trevor was talking. There was, reference to rebates quite a few times. So can you explain rebates?
Yeah, well, basically the rebate is the manufacturer is trying to essentially drive competitiveness to get on the PBM's formularies. And so in a way that they do that is they offer rebates or discounts essentially to get their drugs offered on, for instance, Express Scripts or CVS formularies. And so these are contracts that are negotiated with the PBMs, right? So to get it on their formularies, but then the client, it's really, really important, the rebate arrangements, the competitiveness, because the client is actually, it depends on the actual funding arrangement. So like for RxBenefits, we do traditional. And so the client would actually see, the benefit of the rebates coming back to them. So with us, there's no kind of shell game or spread pricing where, if a rebate for a drug essentially comes back and it's $20, RxBenefits isn't going to take $5 and $15 of that's going back to the client. All $20 of that is going to go back to the client directly. So the competitiveness of the rebate contracts is really, really important, because that's typically when I'm pricing out new opportunities, that's a clinical is a really big piece as well. But the savings when it comes down to the rebates is typically the number one driver. And so they're very, very important.
Trevor, just as clarification, some of the employers may not know what the PBM acronym is. Can you just?
Yeah, that's Pharmacy Benefit Manager.
And an example of a PBM is?
So like CVS or Express Scripts or Optum Rx. Those are the three PBMs that we work with, and they happen to be, they're the three biggest PBMs across the United States. About 80% of the scripts, or 8 out of 10 scripts that are filled on a daily basis, goes through one of those three. And so truly, that's why we at RxBenefits align with them, because, as we know in this business and others, size and scale truly means a lot when it comes down to negotiating power and scaled pricing, et cetera. And so those are just 3 examples. There's far more out there, but those 3 really dominate the space.
And the last question, I use GoodRx. How does that work with this?
Yep. You got it. So GoodRx is it's like using a coupon. You present the coupon at your pharmacy. So you would typically be using GoodRx in place of your pharmacy benefit. So instead of going through an Express Scripts or CVS or Optum, when you go to the pharmacy and give them your ID card, you'd be using GoodRx instead. And so what GoodRx does is they search the market for the best price they can get, for the best list price they can get for medications. So they'll look at, and you might see it when you look on GoodRx, they'll look at Walmart, CVS, Walgreens, Kroger, everyone. They'll look at, and I don't want to get too deep, but they'll look at MAC lists, and they'll look at all these different pricing options and try and negotiate the best one for the utilizers, so the people that are going on to use their coupons. And that's what you would present to the pharmacy. A lot of times it's positioned like GoodRx is going to receive the best price, and that's not always the case. So I used to work in the retail pharmacy. I've done transactions where I've tried the actual ID card, and then they'll say, "Hey, can you try my GoodRx?" And I'll try that too. And then they'll be like, "Well, it's more than my ID card. Let me go back," and then we'll flip back. So it really just depends what the actual lowest net cost will be when you use those types of coupons.
I think that's it. I'm going to wait just a couple more seconds, see if there's any other questions that come through. Okay. think we're good. So thank you, Trevor and Hope, for sharing your expertise with us. Thank you all, the UBA partner firm employees, their clients who've joined us today. And our next webinar will be on June 20th, I believe. And if you could go to the next slide, that will come up. Got it?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. June 20th on creative employee benefit strategies. And this is really focused on lifestyle accounts presented by HR Pro. HR Pro is a valued UBA partner alliance as well. And to learn more, you can always contact your UBA partner firm. Thank you again for participating in the UBA compliance webinar series, and we look forward to seeing you again next month. Have a good day.
Thank you.